Like I just always say, because it beats the alternative. Oh yeah, that's good. Oh, that's good. It just really gets the healthy flesh colored in my cheeks. So lots is going on. Lots to talk about right now, huh? Looks like we kind of took a swat at the hornet's nest over here. And there's more to come on the Today Show, the National Real Estate Post, which you can always check out, thenationalrealestatepost.com. But we stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest, and I frankly thought I was going to catch more shit than I did. And then, of course, the post that I did on the NREP Daily Facebook business page. So I put that out yesterday, and I left it very ambiguous, very light. And by the end of the day, I had like 6 comments and 2 views. And then I came back a few hours later, and there's 130 comments, and there's I don't know, there's a lot of shares. And I just figured it would be about 50-50 with, the lemmings, coming out of the woodwork and just being social media bullies, which they're really fantastic at doing. I just kind of assumed that's the direction the whole thing was going to go. But surprisingly, not as much bullying as I thought. It was overwhelmingly positive. And the only thing that really can tell me is that I think there's been a significant change of opinion. I think people are kind of looking at things a little bit differently now than they were. And here's the whole thing. I want to be clear about this. Like, all I want is something that is healthy for the mortgage industry and for the clients that we represent. That's all I'm looking for. I mean, that's it. And oh, by the way, that's up to 9 shares and 149 comments and 170 reactions. And considering that Facebook is doing massive suppression right now, those are huge numbers, which means this is getting shared and getting pushed to a whole bunch of places. And again, I don't have any vindictive nature towards anybody. I just want to see what's best for the health of the mortgage industry. And right now, what I'm seeing is just, it's kind of gross. It's what's going on is it's bullying, and it's gross. And maybe it's technically legal, but it is unethical. It's just remarkably unethical. It's never been done before. And the thing that I can't understand is why everybody's not seeing this for what it is. This is all coming at a massive, massive benefit to one person and a cost to all of you. That's just how it is. And when you're a publicly traded company, and I talk about this ad nauseum, when you become a publicly traded company, your values are probably going to change, just depending on where your values started at. But when you become a publicly traded company, your values have to be represented in a certain form, don't they? And what I'm talking about is you have a legal and moral obligation. You have a fiduciary to your shareholders, not to your brokers, not to the clients that the brokers represent, not to the real estate agents out there. I'm not saying we can't do both at the same time. I'm not saying that. But first and foremost, we have a fiduciary. We have a legal and moral obligation to first look out for the best interest of the shareholders of that now publicly traded company. And in many cases, what can take place is this puts the company at odds with the people they're making money from. We've seen this time and time again. I talk about this when Zillow started buying and selling houses and acting the part of a real estate agent. I told real estate agents this. They're a publicly traded company. Like, they have a legal and moral obligation to make as much money on that house as humanly possible for their shareholders. That is their job. If they don't do that, they are breaking their fiduciary technically. So where a real estate agent might go to a potential listing or a buyer and try to do the best for them to get the most money because they have a legal and moral obligation to that same fiduciary, but they have that fiduciary to the client, don't they? Now, isn't it interesting when when you become publicly traded, all of a sudden my fiduciary is at odds with that client? It's the same thing in the mortgage space. You could have a company that is totally pro you, pro banker, pro broker, but when they become publicly traded, all of a sudden, I now need to make as much money as humanly possible off of you guys. And listen, there's a lot of publicly traded companies. And I think there's ethical ways of doing this, and I think there's unethical ways of doing it. And I've seen a lot of things take place over the last 6 months that frankly are just underhanded and unethical. And it's remarkable that more people don't see this. I mean, drink the Kool-Aid. Just drink the Kool-Aid. Have you ever had a friend who's been in like a really dysfunctional relationship? And you're like, no, don't you see? He's bad for you. He treats you like shit. He treats you like shit. But I love him. Oh my God, you're missing this. And everybody can see it, but that dysfunctional couple. They might break up, but I love you. Oh, he loves me. It's just like, I just see a part of this industry that is in a dysfunctional relationship. It's something that David Stevens, the past president of the Mortgage Bankers Association and the past president of the FHA, and arguably one of the most successful people in the mortgage space over the past 40 years, referred to some moves that were made as some of the most bizarre things he's ever seen in the mortgage space. And it's like, yeah. And the funny thing is nobody's talking about it because everybody's afraid. That's what happens when you got a bully. But again, we'll talk more about this going forward. But listen, guys, make your own decisions. Just honestly, make your decisions and base those decisions on what are going to be in the best interest of your clients. That's your job as a loan officer. Not what's easiest for you. Not to follow a mantra, something that you would spray paint on a t-shirt in 8th grade. You have a fiduciary, a legal and moral obligation to your clients to do what's best for them. And here's the whole thing. Broker independence is a really cool thing. Brokers are independent, fiercely independent. I have my choices. I can do whatever I want to do. I can send my loan wherever I want to send it. No, you can't. Not for some of you. Because one person said, no, I'm not going to have that anymore. And I'll tell you, I don't want to get in the weeds on this right now, but on that contract, just do me a favor and read 7.08 in your contract. 7.08. Just go read it. If you read the contract when you signed it, the broker agrees that the submission of any mortgage loan application or mortgage, just go read it. You'll see it's be like, wow, did I really sign that? Yeah, you did. Anyways, let's move on. Move on to more interesting things right now. And man, we have a lot to talk about. Doug, I see what we're doing is we're going to, we're not going to talk too much about that right now. I want to talk about some other things. Nick, good analogy. Did you see my show? It's kind of like Matt and Brokers. It's kind of like, Tina and Ike. But Tina figured it out. All right, man. So let's get into this. This is interesting. Home buyer sentiment hits new low in a Fannie survey, a national housing survey. Now, this is pretty interesting, guys. In this home survey that they put out there, the percentage of Americans who think it's a good time to buy a home fell to an all-time low in January. And when they say all-time, right now, home buyer sentiment is lower than it's ever been. And this is according, to the mortgage giant, Fannie Mae. And of course, they're quoting exactly who you think they would quote, which is being rising home prices and interest rate exacerbating the whole idea of affordability. And right now, only 1 in 4 consumers who responded thinks it's a good time to buy a house. That means 75% of people out there right now thinking or considering a house right now think it's a bad time to buy a house. 75%. That's an extraordinary number. And trust me, we're going to have a positive spin on this, but I just want to give you some context for it. And this just came out today. So they go on to say that the one who this is hitting the hardest is younger consumers. Younger consumers, more than any other group, expect home prices to rise even faster. And they also reported a greater sense of macroeconomic pessimism than any of our older groups. So we're talking about those from their late 20s to early to mid 30s. They're the ones who are talking about their economic pessimism right now, and they expect home prices to become even less affordable, more expensive. And that's the sweet spot on the baseball bat right now, isn't it? So 1 out of 4 is bad. But when you consider the ones who it's hit the worst are the ones that we truly want to, whose business we want to covet. And so this does not bode well for us right now, if you think about it. Now, here's another interesting one. Here we go. Look at that. The percentage of Americans. Oh, goodness. Oh, thank you. I need to follow your lead when you're putting these together for me a little bit better. So I'm go ahead and reading these things, and you already put the slides up for me. I'm 2 steps behind. Damn millennials. Okay, now here's another point, and I'm coming to something here, guys. But buyer agent commission fell to the lowest since 2017. Okay, so this is interesting. Between the beginning of September and the end of November, last year's buyers agents commissions averaged just 2.63% of home sale prices. That's down from 2.69% 1 year prior, which is also the lowest in all of Redfin's data on commissions, which goes back to 2017. Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. Right now, we're seeing home buyer sentiment, the lowest it's ever been, only 1 in 4. Even worse for those whose business we want the most. Real estate agent commissions are going down even further, which it is kind of ironic that real estate agents right now are getting sued in a class action lawsuit that is essentially sponsored by the Zillows and Open Doors of the world. You know, those publicly traded companies out there who have a legal and moral obligation to make as much money as they can for their shareholders. But isn't it ironic that they're charging 7.5%, they're getting both sides of the transaction, and they're paying 75 cents on the dollar, and the real estate agents are getting sued at a time when real estate agent commissions are going even lower? Why is that happening? Well, this is very simple, isn't it? With less inventory out there, and our inventory is not as bad as people think it is, but with waning inventory, and a just glut of real estate agents, and I covered this on the National Real Estate Post a couple of weeks ago. The number of agents versus the number of agents versus the number of listings. It comes out to, if you had every agent split every listing, it comes out to 0.161 listings per month per agent. That means your average real estate agent isn't going to close all but maybe 1 transaction per year. These agents are starving to death, and it's getting even worse. So what happens? Well, supply and demand. Real estate agents lower their commissions to try to be more competitive rather than work harder or find different ways to attract business. And I spoke about this at nauseum to, I did an interview today on lab coat agents, and I was saying there's things that agents can do. They can go ahead and, I've said this on our show a million times. They can go after those non-owner occupant investor properties. You go non-owner occupied properties and searches, and you find that person who owns 1 to 2 houses. There's a lot of fatigue there because a lot of those loans were in forbearance as well, and people don't want to unload that shit. There's great opportunities for listings, manufacturing, creating listings where they simply didn't exist before if agents went after that business. The other one I said is go find people who own houses and don't go get get lists of people who own houses who have credit scores that are sub 600. Those are people who spent too much money when they were in lockdown, and they screwed their credit up because they didn't get that house with a 560 credit score. Still today, your average Fannie, Freddie, and even Ginnie credit scores are north of 700. Can you believe that? So you find somebody with jacked up credit. This is somebody who's just went off the rails during the COVID meltdown. And so anyways, there's great ways to generate business there. But what's the point here? What's the point? Here's the point. The point is that when you have agents' commissions going down, that, my friends, is a symptom of an illness, of a sickness. When you have consumer sentiment falling to levels we haven't seen, that is a symptom of an illness. What is the illness? The illness is our housing market. The real estate industry right now is sick. And I even said this before. When you look at the fact that foreclosures are now at an all-time low, it's like they're at 0.171% of all properties are going into foreclosure. That is also a symptom of the same illness. Yes, I said that right. It's not a good thing that foreclosures are that low. It's a bad thing. Why is that? It's because we need to churn real estate in order to create money and opportunities within communities. That's the role of real estate. And when we fail to do that, we neglect from infusing additional funds into our communities. And we all know the reason why foreclosures are so low. It's not because our economy is going glowingly. I mean, look at inflation right now. It's because everybody's sitting on $175,000 in equity, and it's right about that number. So what's the cure? Well, I'll tell you what the cure is. Here's the cure. On Friday afternoon, Ginnie Mae issued a new memorandum stating that they are streamlining its document requirements for service participation in the FHA administration's Advanced Loan Modification Program. That's right. Ginnie Mae, which is FHA, is now making it even easier for bums to go ahead and have their interest lowered, their principal balance lowered, and their past interest, non-paid interest, forgiven. That's a bad thing. Why are we making it easier for these people? Don't we need inventory? Isn't that more important? Well, Brian, you sound like you're being a jerk right now. No, I'm not. I'm being compassionate. Why should somebody who hasn't made their payment for 2 years be rewarded on top of not made their payment over the past 2 years? Because now that person gets their principal balance reduced, they get their interest rate reduced, they get all that past interest that's backloaded on their mortgage forgiven. What about the guy or the gal who made their payment? Well, Brian, they lost their job during the COVID meltdown. Okay, well, you lost your job, but now you got your job back. So get to work. It's time to start making your house payment. Congratulations. You get to stay in your house. And don't tell me there's no jobs, because another report that just came out today says that right now unemployment is relatively high, but jobs available are even higher. People are simply not going back to work in droves. There is no reason to not make your house payment. If you were gainfully employed before, you could be gainfully employed now. And sure, you might have one or two that are falling through the cracks. But for the vast majority, this is a better bet. Let me ask you this. Okay, so do we do a forbearance? Or excuse me, do we do a modification? But you didn't make your house payment for 2.5 years. All right, so we do a modification. That's going to screw the investor in that mortgage-backed security, which is going to compromise future mortgage-backed securities, because we now know that this is an option on the table. Now, I don't know if I want to invest in MBSs anymore, because, man, who knows what happens if things go a little sideways. You might just decide that the health of the economy is more important than my investment. So it does kind of screw them. Screws future home buyers, like I said, because interest in private label securities and mortgage-backed securities is going to wane as well. Screws the servicers, because the servicers are the ones who have to deal with these modifications, and the servicers are also the ones who are ultimately responsible that payment is made on time. And it screws the taxpayers, because what we have figured out over the past few years for all these loans that were in forbearance is that we were subsidizing, the United States taxpayer, was subsidizing in part of what the servicers were going out there and paying. So we're the ones paying the bill for all of this. I don't know, if you lend somebody $20 who's not named your kid, don't you kind of want your $20 back? Well, as a United States tax, and I know we hemorrhage money in this country. I mean, we start our fireplace with, billion-dollar bills. I mean, I know that we piss money away like no other country does. But as a matter of principle, don't you think that's a reasonable idea? Keep rewarding this behavior. Like I said, stay in the house, go back to work, more power to you, but you got to pay what you agreed to. Or you could do the other option, which is hold that note holder to the terms of their note. And if they don't meet the terms of the note, okay, and I'm talking about just their payment, their loan is going to be extended a couple of years because you have that backloaded principal and interest that wasn't paid during the forbearance, which they knew when they signed on for the forbearance. So, or the option is they pay for their note as agreed upon. Or they sell the house and realize all this equity gained, which is a ton. Or the sheriff comes and kicks them, their 76-inch flat screen TV, and their lazy boy out on the curb. If we do that, we don't screw the taxpayer. We don't screw the mortgage-backed security note holder, investor. We don't screw the servicer. Nobody gets screwed. And then you're putting somebody in that house who's actually going to make that payment and pay those taxes. Because the terms of that person who's going to buy the house in the event of a foreclosure or a sale is going to be fairly strict. Because when we look at credit availability right now, it is so much tighter than it's been over the past 20 years. It is remarkably tight. The person who's going to get that house is going to have good credit, in large part, probably a decent down payment, and reserves. I mean, what do you want? Our communities, what do our communities need more? What do our communities need more? So I'm saying what we need to do is we need to put a moratorium on all these forbearances. Tell me that doesn't make sense. Tell me that doesn't make sense. But it's just so mean. Oh, God, we got to get over that. We have to do what's in the best collective interest of all of us. It's about the kibbutz, man. It's the community. It's like what Hillary said. It takes a village full of idiots. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. God damn, you people are so sensitive. Okay. So, with that said, check out the National Real Estate Post. That's going to be my primary. That has always been for years and years my primary source where I'm going to post information. www.thenationalrealestatepost.com. And I know what everybody wants to talk about. We're not going to go into that today. I just can't. I don't want to do it. It's nauseating. But we will be talking about some things going forward about the health of the industry. Like, what do we need to do to make things healthy? And what are we doing to make things not healthy? And, a lot of it's coming out of Michigan, guys. A lot of it is coming out of Michigan. So with that said, I'm going to bid you farewell until tomorrow. Make it a great Monday, man. By the way, what a great weekend. I got to go fly fishing up in the mountains. That was so cool. Went and gambled on the 49er game. That wasn't cool. But the whole other gambling part, which I don't do a bunch, that was kind of fun. Nice weekend. And it's going to be a good weekend this weekend, but we got to get there first. So just be safe today.